So obviously, the last time around, Oregon almost made it, around 47%, and with very little support in ending the prohibition, in moving that policy forward. So, it's obvious that we have to continue to work on Oregon and ending the prohibition of marijuana. And of course, we support any policy that is destined to do that, that's crafted to do that. And the sooner the better. In Maryland, the legislators some of them are asking, well, why can't we wait until, we get some data from Colorado? And I'm like, how much more data do we need? We've got 4 decades of data. One more year is thousands of more people arrested for marijuana violations. One more year is billions of dollars going into the hands of the cartels and other, segments of organized crime and local gangs. One more year is another year of no taxes being paid on the money that's being generated by this trade. So let's do it now. And so I'm happy that, Paul and others are trying to move this policy forward and the prohibition of marijuana in Oregon. I wish it would have gone last time around, but, hopefully it go this time. I'm certain we're going to get more than 47%. Just got to get that ballot out there.
Well, we're working hard at that, and so if our audience wants to find out more, they can go to our web portal at hemp.org. That's HEMP.org. And we could certainly use anyone's support to help put this important issue back before Oregon voters. There's been talk for many decades that we can't reform drug laws because of these international treaties. That's been used not just here in the United States, but all around the world. Fortunately, the Obama administration hasn't, pursued that and tried to stop these the initiative that passed in Colorado and Washington. Did that come as a surprise to you?
So it does come as a surprise. I just changed my Google page, my home page on Google. I put up a picture of the president back in, I think it was 2004, when he made the statement that the war on drugs is an utter failure. So I put that up on my page, and then I posted a question, say, okay, Mr. President, you said it, so what are you going to do about it? So, yeah, they have moved a little bit, maybe an inch when they need to move a yard, and we have to continue to move them. The people, all of us, have to continue to force them to do what we know is right.
We appreciate your hard work at this, and you come on at a crucial time, just when after a long winter of discontent, we're finally starting to see some sunshine and some changes from, really the clock turned back since the Reagan era. Back when Jimmy Carter was president, it looked like there was going to be some drug law reform, but when the Reagan administration began, they started the whole Just Say No campaign and doubled down on the war on drugs. And started, I think, perhaps with civil forfeiture. Civil forfeitures had what I believe is a corrupting influence on law enforcement. It's never been allowed before the Reagan administration, where they can come in and the police can seize assets and use those assets. And what we've seen here in the Northwest, and I suspect nationwide, is that law enforcement will target the people who have equity in their home, for instance. They'll go after them preferentially over people who don't have assets that they can seize, which, are then used for things like conferences in Maui and their personal budgets for their particular departments. Have you noticed that sort of influence, Neill, and can you speak to that?
Yeah, and I'm going to speak to two things as to why law enforcement continues to do this work. Obviously, that is one, and that is nothing new, Casper. When I was working, commanding these task forces, we had people cops whose only job was to do financial workups on people. You know, to find out what they own, how many pieces of property they own, how many cars they own, what's paid for, what's not paid for. You know, is there a mortgage? You know, is there a lien? And they would prepare a packet for the investigator. And unfortunately, many times the investigator would decide whether or not it's going to work with the case based on that financial workup. Now, in addition to the asset forfeit, the civil asset forfeit, which most task forces would not be able to survive without these proceeds, we have the federal grant. The federal grants is millions of dollars every year from burn grants and cop grants. That is another financial windfall for these task forces and law enforcement organizations. But there's something else that is just as important as to why cops don't change. And that is because drug enforcement has become the identity of law enforcement. The vast majority of the work that we do is somehow related to these policies of prohibition. Whether it's the crime, you know, whether it's the, you know, clearing of corners and going after drug dealers in our neighborhoods and dealing with the spin-off crime from those who are addicted, who are committing burglaries and robberies and assaults to get the money they need. I would say 70 to 75% of the work that law enforcement does, especially in urban America, is directly related to drug prohibition policies, and it has become the identity of law enforcement. And once you remove that identity, it's like, okay, so who are we now? And even as individual police officers, many of them who have spent the vast majority of their 2-3 decade careers enforcing drug laws. I was one of them. And it was a very hard pill to swallow in taking this position that I now hold, because that was my identity. That is what I did. That's where I spent most of the 3 decades that I did in law enforcement. But I think what really, and I didn't mention this, what really pushed me along and helped me to swallow that pill was when my friend Ed Totley was assassinated working undercover back in 2000. The pain and from that caused me to stop long enough to take a really good look at what we were doing and how ineffective it was, and to also realize that these policies were counterproductive to public safety. And that helped, unfortunately, it helped move me along in my thinking process. And but that identity thing for law enforcement is huge. It is really huge, and we have to find a way to work through that.